We've talked about price many times before on this channel, and unfortunately, price is kind of bait. It feels like to me, because in general, you can say, hey, $4.99 for a comic, especially one where you kind of pick out a comic that the quality seems lower on, pages are thin, maybe the actual page quality is low, and it's easy to kind of bash on it. So I don't want to do that, but I do want to talk about price because we're hitting this point where you can't not talk about it. Hey everybody, this is Perch. It's price in comics. I think is a big. I mean, it really is the root of a lot of problems. And for a history lesson, briefly, back when this guy Doug Ernst was really kind of getting what would become Comicsgate going, one of the biggest items, if not the biggest, it was kind of creator behavior, which is a big bucket of worms in a lot of cases. But the other big bucket was price. And in that topic, I've fully supported the conversation that goes on there and still do. I think price is completely off in comics today. And I say comics as a whole. It's off for the mainstream. It's off for crowdfunding. It's off for a lot of things. It's not sustainable. Now, keep in mind real quick, I just want to insert this because a lot of people are like, wait, this comment is, if you are happy paying a dollar amount for a comic. Like, for example, if you back a crowdfunded book that's $25 and you're happy paying that, good for you. I'm not, there are no insults. Value is what people will pay for things. But I want to take a step above any single crowdfunded comic, any single Marvel comic or DC comic. Forget the comic you like, the one thing that you're happy with. Take it one step up and look at the industry as a whole, kind of as a giant blanket, and think about the pricing that goes on there. For mainstream, direct market comics, $4.99 is rapidly becoming the norm. There's still comics that are $3.99, absolutely, but I think you have to be a little naive to not believe that within 2 years or so, $4.99 is going to be the norm. Certainly at Marvel, probably at DC, and that's just where we're headed. There's an article on Bleeding Cool came up, but I mean, this is something we've been talking about. It's kind of nice to see the news sites actually covering stuff that is is news. I mean, for a long time, it was like, there's just people on Twitter talking about price. These are troublemakers. It's a hate group over there talking about price. But the reality is, this article is pointing out that Empire #3, this is Marvel's delayed event that's now going, that is coming out kind of weekly. It's basically a 20-page comic clocking in at $4.99. Now, the news story that they're reporting on is more on the bait and switch. This comic was originally advertised to retailers in the solicitations as 40 pages at $4.99. And everybody knew that 40 pages wasn't really going to be 40 pages. It was probably, 32 pages of comic is roughly what it is. And you get, some character designs and some scripts and, some that title page that has nothing on it and other stuff. But at this point, we're talking about, 20 pages at $4.99. And there's been a lot of back and forth about how, well, that's just inflation, but it's not. If you run the math, it is not. Back when I did that video about the Extinction Agenda at $1 a comic and how that price is now like $2.15 or thing roughly with inflation 30 years later. And there's a big difference between a $1 comic in 1990 and $5 today. That's far more than regular inflation. So, and yes, there's, you can argue it goes back and forth. There's maybe higher quality cover or maybe lower quality cover, depending on your point of view and some what's going on. But in general, $4.99 is too expensive. Just like I will argue that for crowdfunded books to really gain a lot of momentum and get a lot of kind of ongoing support. When I say ongoing support, I mean people who are not supporting a single creator that they like, but supporting comics in general through crowdfunding. $25 is too expensive. And please don't go in the comments and say, but there's special things. Yes, some have special back matter material, everything else, but I'm talking ongoing. If you think about yourself buying comics every single month and that business growing to include new people and more audience, then $25 is too high. Just like in the mainstream, $4.99 is too high. Now, will there be some people who buy it? Absolutely. Will the big names, if you put out a $4.99 book that has Art Adams, just 16 pages of Art Adams, people will buy it because it's Art Adams. But as a standard price for the product, it's too much. And I think we've really hit a place where that is a barrier, certainly a big barrier to entry. It's going to actually prevent people from buying. It's going to head people off. And I've argued with this about this with people who will say, no, it's not necessarily and everything else. But I just look at the market. I look at people who come into the store. I look at other people who have shops. I look at this idea that we have to attract new readers into comics. And if you are new and you're trying to take a chance on a comic, you're interested in getting something big, something cool, it's a hard sell at $5 to get somebody to come in and say, I watched, say the Avengers movie, or I watched, Birds of Prey, and now I want a Birds of Prey book. $5 feels steep. I mean, that is probably the cost in some areas of your movie ticket, depending on where you live, or at least, half of your movie ticket. And whether it's fair or not, people are going to value the 2-hour movie with all the special effects and everything higher than a 20-page comic at $5. It's too much. But the real problem is not that first comic that gets bought, because definitely if you've got a family, I've watched this a million times, you've got dad and his daughter, or dad and his son, they just watched the Avengers, they're now coming into the comic shop, they want to buy a comic. They've made a decision to travel to the shop, get out of the car, walk into the store, wander around. 9 times out of 10, they're going to buy something. Most people don't go through that trouble, then go into the shop and then just leave. They'll buy something. So they'll buy a comic. And so generally we'll be like, whoa, $5. I've just heard this conversation a lot. $5? Okay, well, you can buy one. So the kid will buy, look around and find the cover that looks most exciting to them. And here's a bit of a crapshoot. This is where you want to kind of intercede a little bit and say, you want to steer them to a book that tees up the next purchase, tees up them wanting to come back and get the next issue. So tee up something with some good art, good story, something that's going to hook the person. You don't want them, for example, buying that Avengers issue where the Avengers are hanging out in the mountain and in the hot tub with a sea-level artist and kind of weird perspective and just random characters and everything else. Don't buy that. Don't steer them for that, because they're not going to come in for that second issue. And this is where the $4.99 price point really hurts comics, because it doesn't tee up the next issue. It will for new readers, they'll come in, they'll get one, but they're too they haven't been hooked yet. They don't have the continuity. They don't have all the excitement. They haven't been hooked by this comic and just reading comics in general to want to come in and commit. Drive to the shop, come in and buy another $5 book. They're not going to do that. And that's the core problem that we have, is that you may get a first purchase, but you're priced in such a way that's going to eliminate the second purchase. And if there is no second purchase, there's not going to be a third through 100. Comics are just flat out too expensive. Now, there may be a bunch of different ways to solve this. I've talked about, using digital as an approach for new readers to kind of hook them in at a much cheaper price point. But as long as we're stuck in this weird world where digital has to be priced the same as print, because some comic shops say, well, it's unfair if you price it cheaper because then people won't come to the shop. That's a very weak way of looking at it, unfortunately, because you're priced at such a value that people aren't going to come to the shop, period. So you want to draw them in somehow. So this is a problem, and I think this is the problem. So as much as we talk about creators, being a-holes on social media, or this hiring or that hiring, or even the renumbering, all of that kind of stuff, there are problems in there. But I think they pale in comparison to what's becoming the biggest problem for comics, and that's price. $4.99 for Empire #3 is too expensive. I mean, strategically, coming back from the shutdown, that's way too high. I mean, for comparison, if you're going to buy Netflix, it's $8.99 a month for basic. That's one and a half comics, okay, well, more than that, 1 3/4 comics equals Netflix. And there's nobody is going to say, yeah, this, 2 20-page comics is the equivalent of the streaming service. They're just not going to do it. And so I think this is something that it is the alarming problem. Unfortunately, I think if comics settle in on this $4.99 model, I think this big chunk of the audience, a good 20% or so of the audience, just stops buying. Especially, I think we're already facing some of that with the shutdown, people just not coming back. And if there's any kind of economy dip and everything else. So as much as we talk about a lot of other issues, and I think it's interesting to talk about the other issues and kind of speculate on how we fix it and where we go with it and what we can do, price is in my mind rapidly becoming the biggest and almost only issue. So that's where I think. What do you think? Is there another problem as big as price? And again, to be fair, because I talked about $4.99, it's an easy one for us all to wrap our head around. If crowdfunding is going to grow, then there's going to need to be a way to come in and enter that market. Otherwise, what crowdfunding is going to serve are fans of creators are going to gravitate to those creators. It's going to become they call it a vanity project, but I don't like that word because vanity makes it sound like it's scummy in some ways. Not a vanity project, but people who are already an existing fan of these creators are going to come in and be okay with spending the $25. But somebody new to comics is going to struggle at $25. And again, it's always, people mistake it. They focus on the first purchase. The first purchase is not the trap. It's the second. Most people will, once they've committed to their heads to look at comics, they'll make that first purchase even if they're spending more than they want to. But they won't come back a second time. That second time is the danger. But what do you think? Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about pricing. Is it really the issue? Because I think it really is. Leave me a comment below. Like, subscribe. Hey, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for? I hate saying it, but what are you waiting for? Why not? I'll just say it all upbeat. Sure. Please subscribe. Like the video if you don't mind. Follow me on social media or shoot me an email at comicsperch@gmail.com. Most importantly, though, thanks for listening.